Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome to Quilts for Miles. So in this video I thought I would bring you along while I baste and to quilt and bind my second Hugs and Kisses quilt. So as you'll be able to see just here, I have already basted half of the quilt and I've only got this row to go. This is my very last row, the third row on the quilt, and this is all I've got left now to baste, sorry. I'll also, when I've basted and I'm ready, I'll also show you how I mark my lines on here, because I actually don't have, as you can see, I don't have any markings on this quilt, but I am going to be doing walking for quilting. And when I go to mark, I actually just use painter's tape on the diagonal and use painter's tape as my guide, and I will show you that as I come to that stage of this. So basically for the basting, all I have done is just laid my backing fabric onto my table, then I just laid my batting on, and then I've just laid my quilt top on, and I've just smoothed everything out as much as I can. If there's when I'm finished the pinning, if there's big chunks where it's been caught and it's going to look really bad, I will unpick a little bit and re-smooth it out and redo it. But loose bits like this, it doesn't worry me as much. So basically it's just like any other pin basting, is basically now I will just go, I've smoothed everything out, so now it's just going back through and out and putting pins everywhere. So in something like this I only put like 3 pins. In this I've just put one here and one here, so you'll see how I pin it. So I do put a decent amount of pins in, but I don't go over the top of pins either. You can probably see from up here, I do roll the quilt up so it's all sitting on the table and it's not draping down and pulling down into the gap down here. Everything is rolled and it is sitting nicely up on my table. As you can see, I've basted all I can baste. So now it's time to move the quilt to either side to get the last bit on this row done before I have to then move it up to get the last bit done, basically. So all I do is I just gently move it to the side. And by moving it to the side, this now exposes the rest of this kiss block. I just gently pull it all up and just straighten out this side again. Just make sure everything's nice and straight and as flat as it can go underneath. And then I straighten out the quilt block. That's how I move it around, and now I'm ready to baste again. So now that I've got this section that I can baste it, I now just roll the quilt up, and by doing that last roll, this now exposes this last row. So now I can just pin baste this last row, and then this quilt is ready for quilting. Okay, so now I've got all this pin basted, this quilt top is all pin basted. It's now time to cut off all this excess batting and backing, because I don't need it anymore. And I don't need that extra bulk to go underneath my machine when I'm quilting it. All the excess off this quilt, and I have, as you can see, I haven't quite measured, but I have left a little bit of backing and batting around this quilt. It's on all 4 sides, I've got a little bit left, quilt top stretches at all, then it will get squared up and trimmed off when I trim everything even to this quilt top when the quilting is finished. So now the basting is finished on this quilt top, I'm now ready to lay it down on the ground and do a straight-ish diagonal line from corner to corner, and the quilting will start on this big piece of a quilt. I've got my first line, which is the masking tape, all set up ready to quilt. Just trying to find where I'm going to start. The other end. Okay, so now that I've got this quilt top basted, it's now ready and time to quilt it. So as you can see, I have got my quilting line running straight through the diagonal, roughly through the diagonal of this block here. Now what I do to set up my next line is I place my ruler and place a 3-inch mark on my quilting line, on the stitch line, just like that. So you'll be able to see the 3-inch mark is roughly on that stitch line. If it's off a fraction, it won't matter, as long as it's on here and it's on here, that will then keep this line fairly straight. Because as I've said before, it is very hard to stitch right next to masking tape. And then I run a piece of this painter's tape next to my ruler, because that's 3 inches away now, and this is roughly 1.5 inches wide. My walking foot is roughly 1/2 inch. The width of my walking foot is roughly 1/2 inch. So 3 plus 1.5 is 4.5, plus my 1/2 inch walking foot gives me roughly 5 inches. Give or take, it could be a little bit bigger, it could be a little bit smaller, but that's roughly what I'm going for. Is if I keep with this same measurements throughout this whole quilt, it won't matter if it measures 5 1/4 or 4 3/4, because it's going to measure that in this whole quilt. So then every single quilting line will be the same width distance apart, and so then they do end up being squares and that sort of stuff, because everything is the same width apart, and I get the look that I'm aiming for. So I'm actually just quilting all this on the diagonal, on both diagonals. I'm just quilting these quilts. Simple, sort of fast, but it's very simple. Normally takes me probably about 4 hours to quilt this whole quilt. So 2 hours per side, so 2 hours for the lines going this way, and then 2 hours for the lines to go this way. Give or take on the weather and how hot it is, but that's just roughly what I'm doing. So I just run my tape along my ruler, and because it's only a 24-inch ruler, that's all I can do at the moment is 24 inches. So then basically all I do is leave my tape there. I don't break the tape or anything, and I just keep sliding this quilt along the table and then just keep lining up. Done. And just like that, you can see I've now got the tape. So now what I do is I line the edge of my walking foot straight along this edge of this tape, and then I sew. So that's what I said earlier, that this line here is the only line that I sew directly next to this tape. Now I'm sewing a 1/2 inch away, because I'm sewing my walking foot width away, which is roughly 1/2 inch away from this tape. And as I come down, I will take out any pins that are near my walking foot, because once I'm finished the diagonal lines going this way, there'll be no more pins left in this quilt because it doesn't need to be. It's all secure. So when I'm coming this way, it's basically no pins, nothing's in my way. I'm just running the quilt straight on through. So now this is set up for the next line of quilting. Okay, now as you're about ready to see, this painter's tape is really easy to get off, and I do reuse this, so you can see that I've got some batting on this, so I just rip it so I don't have that batting, and I reuse it, so I just rip it like this and I get rid of that, which is that won't stick anymore because it's just been on the batting, but this part that's been on the fabric only, it will stick again. And this is how easy it does come off fabric and leaves no residue, it leaves nothing. Just keep pulling it and the same goes for this side. It's been on the, anything that's been on the batting a little bit, it just gets ripped off and I don't use it. So now I just repeat the same process I just did before. 3 inches width walking foot and doing a line, and I just repeat that same process until this side is quilted.